by continuing to expose the conditions of human rights in Iran, as they've done through the United Nations, and Canada have been very active in that regard.
You have over 1 minute left? Do I still have some time left then? Yes. Over 1 minute. Would you be in favor then of charges being laid before international courts against a number of players in Iran, and mainly the Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad?
By all means, we have a personal experience with the Ahmadinejad. We have the Austrian parliamentarians, some prominent parliamentarians have actually conducted investigations in the involvement of Ahmadinejad in the assassination of 1989, which I failed to mention here. Ahmadinejad supposedly was personally involved in that assassination. So Ahmadinejad, as you know, is a IRGC commander, is a Iranian Revolutionary Guards commander, and he's been in charge of the abroad activities for many, many years. And he's been especially trained and worked in Iranian Kurdistan to hunt down Iranian Kurdish opposition groups, and he was personally involved, and there are credible reports that he was in that assassination in 1989. So that's one part. We have a personal experience, but also, yes, I think President Ahmadinejad, he could be as well. We definitely welcome any charges. I mean, there has to be a lot of efforts that put into place by a lot of governments and a lot of human rights lawyers that can put together. But maybe, I'm sure Canada's help in that regard would be very helpful. I mean, who would thought that maybe someone like President of Sudan would be indicted by international criminal courts? I think the situation, I'm not undermining the situation in Darfur and in Sudan, but definitely the human rights condition in Iran is much more grave and much more threatening. And I think much of it has to do with all of the Iranian leaders, especially and Ahmadinejad being one of them. I think there are opportunities and there are possibilities, and we definitely, as a political party and as an organization representing various nationalities, and I think the whole people of Iran would welcome such indictment if anything put forward.
All right.
One final question. Do you not believe that at this point, if a number of countries in the international community were to issue warrants prohibiting the Iranian president from entering their country, that would actually have an effect, and that it would in a way condemn his actions, that it would be literally actions that could be taken that would serve as moral support to your people, direct action?
I think it would definitely help. I mean, if you look at it, it depends really whether we don't want to undermine the whole process by being very political in that, but there has to be some credible documents in terms of sanctioning a government head, especially someone like Ahmadinejad being the president of the Islamic Republic. As we know, U.S. had a very hard time to preventing him from going to the States despite all the difficulties. So I mean, there has to be played within the international rules and norms. But it is, I think a lot of Iranian people, I mean, don't look at the news, and sometimes the people have gathered in hundreds welcoming Ahmadinejad. This is all just really sham. This all shows off. But really, Iranian people would welcome any international support for to condemning the actions of their leaders, because Iranians have actually coming out in hundreds and in thousands themselves sometimes to condemn these actions. But I think if individual countries are taking measures to maybe sanction someone like Ahmadinejad, it's possible, and I think it have productive effects. But one thing that could be done is, I think we should start from somewhere maybe lower, and there are other individuals who are directly involved. There could be sanctions, and there might be cases against them. For example, someone like Rafsanjani, the previous president, has an indictment by the German court to be involved in 1992 assassination, and the previous Iranian foreign ministry is the same thing. And they have a bank account in Europe with millions of dollars in them, and they still are able to go freely in a lot of the Gulf countries. And lately, Rafsanjani had gone to Iraq. I think there's an Interpol warrant for these individuals, but really there's no action being done. And I think maybe the Interpol authority doesn't go beyond the European borders, but it's possible that Canada can push for such action and measures, because Rafsanjani, the previous president before Khatami, was directly involved in not only the 1992 assassination of Iranian Kurdish activist leaders, but also in the bombing of the 1994 bombing of Argentina of the Jewish Center. I mean, there's an indictment by the Iranian leaders, of then the leaders, the foreign ministry, the head of the intelligence, and as well as the president. So I think it's possible to do it, but we have to start somewhere. But I think the ones that have been indicted are going around freely, and we should start from those, and we can move on to someone like Ahmadinejad.
Right. Thank you. I've been allowing these rounds to go on longer than I had intended initially, and it's simply because the questions have come at the very end of the allowable time, and you've been giving very thorough answers. But in the interest of time, I'm just going to perhaps have to be a little bit tougher as we move along through the hearing, in order to ensure that everybody gets a chance to ask their questions. That being said, Mr. Marsden, please.
Well, I just want to say I was going to comment on the comprehensive answers that you are giving us and the detail that you're providing to us, and I'm very impressed with that. And I was going to speak a little bit about the fact that the Sunni mosques being prohibited. My understanding, I spent a little bit of time in Saudi Arabia 30 years ago, so it's a long time ago, but that the Sunni interpretation of Islam is, we would call it, more progressive than the Shia interpretation, and perhaps that prohibition is actually intended to fortify the revolution and to keep people from learning a better way. But my line of questioning kind of got taken away from me, because I'm very concerned with what I'm hearing, almost like a subtext of what you're talking about. Just yesterday we had that inflammatory speech in Geneva, and everybody wants to refer to it as Durban 2 and that. Well, I think that this is going to be fairly notorious as Geneva now, following those remarks. But it's ironic, because today is Holocaust Memorial Day, and people around the world are marking that horrible event. And we have the Holodomor that took place in the Ukraine, and what your comments and the subtext I'm referring to is, I've got a great unease that there's a systemic move in place that could move over to genocide at some point. That the reports we've heard, not just your own testimony, previous reports about the systemic nature of the discrimination and the torture and the imprisoning. And another part of a question I will ask you as well, 26 children were executed last year, and there's 130 on death row. How many of those are from the minorities? And it just seems to me that the unease I'm talking about is the move is drifting to that horrible area.
Yeah, just to go back from your last question, is really how many people of, as I said, how many people of those who've been executed belong to ethnic minorities and national minorities. I mean, I have a report by a credible human rights organization listing all the political prisoners in Iran. About 520 known, at least. I mean, this is just known. I could assure you that 90% of those belong to ethnic minorities, with 80% or at least 70% of them being Kurdish. These prisoners, and this is just people who have been indicted or been somehow giving a sentence of year, 6 months, usually not 6 months, because they don't count these 6 months. Usually by some sort of international norms, usually 24-hour detention is legal beyond that, but in Iran usually 6 months and 9 months is really normal, being detained in Iran. And in Iranian Kurdistan, these are even worse. Sometimes people are actually disappeared for 12 months and they come back and You know, they don't even know who they are. So to answer your questions, yes, most of those who've been executed are mostly the juveniles. Mostly the executions has to do with offenses, and offenses maybe criminal offenses in a sense, if they've killed someone, or usually it has to do with this, and they don't really discriminate in that regard. Usually they execute anyone who has maybe killed someone in their early childhood, or so. In that regard, there have been instances where there are Kurds also, but most of it is really, it's just the nature of the regime that tries to defies the international rights of the child, especially which they're signatory to, that they're not allowed to, so especially execute people who have committed a crime in their childhood. Again, whether this is an act of genocide, I think there are a lot of grounds that we could that what's going on in Iran actually could be called an act of genocide, because in many ways, as I said, there have been 50,000 people, of innocent Iranian Kurdish people who have died in Iran. Just I'm talking about the Iranian Kurds who have died in Iran since the Iranian Revolution. I think 50,000 deserves and could be set as a precedent for some sort of genocidal procedures, or some genocidal act. And I think, and as I said, I mean, the negligence right now, the negligence in terms of removing mines.
Second, so that there's not a misunderstanding. I wasn't trying to suggest that the executions in prison themselves were an act of genocide. I was talking about the systemic persecution of people and the variety of different events that happen in their lives, from disappearing for the year, or the treatment when in prison, and the things that you've already mentioned. Sounds like there's a systemic discrimination that, to a degree, that my concern was it may well lead to that. I would like to ask you another question, though, and we know that the ethnic and religious minorities in Iran are persecuted. It's very plain to us. We've had more than one witness speaking to that. And I always look for a light someplace, and what I'm wondering about, is there any organization out there amongst these different groups coming together in a movement? You did talk before about the fear the youth have that they had one revolution and that actually hurt them. Yeah. With the internet and all of the complexities that are there, that also offers a great tool for organizational work like that. And I'm just wondering if those groups are coming together with a purpose of any kind.
As I said, I mean, there is a movement, and that organization that was set up was mainly to really respond to these necessities, that not only we should bring about awareness within the Iranian nationalities, but also bring awareness within the Persians who are dominant politically, culturally, and economically. So what we have done in that regard is really an answer to the current situation, that yes, we should present an alternative. We should tell the Iranian national minorities that it's possible to have some sort of government in Iran that not only respects the rights of people, but it's also a member of the international community that respects the rights of others as well, and that becomes a good member of the international community, not like Ahmadinejad, who's representing a great country so badly. As in terms of in terms of media and in Iran right now, even though there's a lot of censorship, but especially satellite has actually helped a lot. Right now there's a lot of satellite stations that are broadcasting to Iran, and not only Iranian or Persian or Kurdish satellite stations, but also other stations so people in Iran have a lot of access to information and resources, whether be it the internet, be it satellite. So there's that, and then government, by the way, is actually moves into houses and confiscates satellite dishes, and this is a policy, and that's done without warrants, and they just get a tip from someone that yes, this neighborhood has this many satellite stations, so they just go on the rooftop and then take satellite stations out and then take them and charge people for maybe $100, $200.
For one more question.
Yes, we'll encourage the question to be short and the answer to be brief as well.
It will be short.
But yes.
Considering what the President